special commitment to planning and plan implementation since we assumed office on May 29, 2018.
President Buhari launches Nigeria Agenda 2050.
Senate calls on security agencies to strengthen surveillance across the country.
Nigeria and Indonesia signed letter of intent to deepen bilateral defense cooperation.
And Good Morning Nigeria today focuses on trending issues in the 10th National Assembly leadership.
Well, it's indeed well known that in any democracy where the interests and voices of the people matter, there must be the legislative arm. In Nigeria, the National Assembly is the democratic body with the elected members that represent the interests of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and its people. Now, this institution makes laws for the country and also holds the government to account.
The national legislature, which is bicameral in nature, comprises both the Senate, which is often referred to as the Red Chamber, and then the Green Chamber, which is the House of Representatives. Now, the National Assembly's powers to make laws is summed up in Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution of 1999 as amended.
Yes, and the Senate being one of the chambers and headed by the President of the Senate, is assisted by the Deputy President of the Senate, while the House of Representatives, headed by the Speaker, is also assisted by a Deputy Speaker, along with 8 other principal officers that include Majority Leader, Deputy Majority Leader, Minority Leader, Deputy Minority Leader, Chief Whip, Deputy Chief Whip, Minority Whip, and Deputy Minority Whip. The Apex Parliament operates the committee system. I'm just wondering about all those offices.
Well, they're referred to usually as the Principal Officers Council. That's because that's the team that runs the assembly with the presiding officer, of course, at the apex. And then the President of the Senate is also the chair of the National Assembly. Now, the presiding officers serve, as it were, as heads that coordinate the activities of their members, who are 109 in the Senate and 360 in the House of Representatives. And both chambers appoint members into its special and standing committees.
With the supplementary elections concluding the 2023 general elections, the institution has started experiencing some frenzy, of course, over who to occupy leadership and strategic positions in the 10th Assembly. Such issues as zoning, competence, power balancing, and credibility have been whipped up before the formal commencement of the 10th National Assembly.
Well, I maybe recall, Kieran, that the last election witnessed a number of very worrisome sentiments, including tribal, regional, and religious. And many are wondering whether those factors will also be in contention or be critical to the choices of the leadership in the 10th National Assembly, which is due to be inaugurated later next month, following, of course, the proclamation to be issued by the new president, who is expected to be sworn in on the 29th of this month. Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we'll, of course, be again probing into the trending issues with regard to the jostling for positions in the leadership of the 10th National Assembly. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. Welcome to another insightful edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We are live on the network service, of course, here from our Abuja studios. As usual, we are going to be serving you other segments that will form part of our package today. For now, let's join Frama Pine for highlights of the morning news. Hello, Frama. You are glowing this morning. You're welcome.
Good morning, Kieran. Good morning, Kingsley. You can call it the morning glow. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. The federal government has evacuated some of her nationals that were stranded at the Sudan-Egyptian border while escaping from the ongoing war in Sudan. The evacuees arrived at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, Wednesday night via Nigerian Air Force aircraft and Air Peace.
Before, Sudan was very calm and cool. It was after this war, Sudan became something else, which we don't expect it to be.
They've gone through a very traumatized period, but we're glad and we give thanks to Almighty Allah that all of them are back safely. No life was lost.
We could always do better as a government, as a people, but we're glad that at the end of it all, we're going to have everybody back, and the worst part is over.
President Muhammadu Buhari formally unveiled and launched the next long-term development plan for Nigeria, the Nigeria Agenda 2050 for implementation. The launch of the document took place on the sideline of the Federal Executive Council meeting at the Presidential Villa in Abuja.
It is now my honor and privilege to formally unveil and launch the next long-term development plan for Nigeria, the Nigeria Agenda 2050 for implementation. And God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the Federal Executive Council has approved the National Blockchain Policy for Nigeria, which will further qualify Nigeria to be among the frontline countries in the digital economy. The Ministry of Aviation is to continue advancing the sector as more funds were approved for its projects. Among them is approval to purchase 5 units of firefighting vehicles for the nation's airports.
We have joined them and we are being proactive to ensure that with the policy we will increase our talent development, also discover our young innovators, give them all the necessary support they need as provided by Nigeria Startup Act 2022, and also ensure the adoption of the technology, particularly as we know blockchain technology ensures about information integrity or data integrity.
The Ministry of
Now, Senate has called on security agencies to review and strengthen their surveillance across the country. The Senate at Wednesday's plenary also approved the restructuring of ways and means of 22.7 trillion naira as requested by the President.
Would be using this opportunity to ask for the reinforcement of security and their presence in the affected communities in Plateau State.
Security situation in some parts of the country have started to deteriorate, but I think our security agencies, the military, have done a very good job of improving the security situation across the country.
The National Assembly is set to transmit to President Muhammadu Buhari for assent the 5th Constitution Alteration Bill number 20, which seeks uniformity on retirement age and pensions right for judicial officers. The changes are in favor of judicial officers in both the federal and state public service.
This is one of the landmark achievements that is going to give good service to our nation. And we still have one other alteration that is important. I believe if they give us a positive response, we'll be able to have the alteration in favor of local government autonomy.
Speakers represented them. We met with them, and they all unanimously agreed to this provision. So delaying their forwarding their resolution is not in line with gentleman agreement as agreed with them.
National Chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Abdullahi Adamu, says the party is consulting towards a possible consensus in electing the leadership of the 10th Assembly come June 2023. This was at the end of the party's National Working Committee meeting in Abuja.
President-elect, the Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu, we have to take him along. He traveled after the elections and he came back only last week. And we must carry him along. And we cannot stop those who are ambitious or zonal interests or even individual interests, institutional interests. We cannot deny them. And for as long as that is there, we have to find a way, persuasive manner of getting some level of consensus. And that's what we are working on. It's not a one-day affair.
Now, representatives of the United Nations, the African Union, and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development have met to discuss peaceful solutions to the conflict in Sudan, repeating calls for an immediate ceasefire, opening a humanitarian corridor and offering aid to people in need.
We also naturally discuss political issues, particularly on the crisis. The trilateral organizations have continued to work with the parties for advancing the ceasefire and opening the humanitarian corridors.
It is incredibly important that we are behind an African solution to this catastrophe in Sudan. We need a cessation of the hostilities. We also need to address the humanitarian needs that are needed in Khartoum, in the rest of Sudan.
And that has been the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kirian and Kingsley after the commercial break. Don't go away.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business news, and we join our correspondent for stories from that sector.
The Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, has predicted that the agricultural sector, which contributed 26.97% to the national GDP in 2022, stands to be the most vulnerable sector to flood devastation this year's rainy season. In the banking sector, the efforts of the CBN to ensure an efficient payment system in the country have boosted the e-Naira initiative, with transactions hitting 1.4 million as of March 31st, 2023. The CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, disclosed this at the CBN's 34th Seminar for Finance Correspondents and Business Editors. Meanwhile, the Central Bank of Nigeria says it will soon audit the nation's payment system following the challenges and widespread transaction failure experienced by bank customers due to the spike in the number of e-payment transactions during the Naira redesign program. With business, Vivian Izadifi.
Well, we appreciate that package. Well, next for us is a review of today's national dailies.
Abuja is here with us for the newspaper review segment. Chukwudi, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Yes, I'm here, and eagerly so. It's a bright day.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, good morning
Good
first.
morning, yeah.
Have you noticed that the day breaks a lot earlier now?
We have longer days, I guess.
Yes, my geography has never been terribly good, but I noticed.
Yeah,
and it frightens me because I would think I'll get late to this place.
Not quite. In some climes, you know, public announcements will be made when such adjustment is made. I recall in Tel Aviv, we were there for a visit, and after 2 days, they gave us a warning about the adjustment, in the day. So some people rescheduled they are originally, build events and activities. So it was like a national issue. So look, you're going to have a longer days, shorter nights, and therefore you have to adjust to our programs and all of that. I didn't understand initially, but I was asking
you just get this feeling of witchcraft early dawn, Anyhow.
All right, we have 3 papers to review this morning, plus, of course, the ones Chukwudi may have perused. So let's begin with the Daily Sun. The Daily Sun. Akwaramadu, Senate pleads for mercy, joins others in asking the UK government for leniency. That's on page 26. Now, the lead story on the Daily Sun, I won't marginalize any part of Nigeria. That's Tinubu. With a rider, hails Wike for championing justice, but declines commitment on refund of money spent building federal roads, bridges in Rivers State. It's on page 6. Opposition reps elect insist on contesting speakership position. Is on page 26. Obi's mantra mandatory for elected LP office holders, says parties, on page 27. You can't halt demolition at airports, federal government tells Senate. It's on page 6. Work for national unity, northern elders tell Iwayanwo. It's on page 26. National Assembly, we are not in a hurry to zone offices. Damu, the APC chair there, it's on page 28. Criminal gang beheads police, ASP, 3 vigilantes in Abia, in Abia State. That's on page 4. All right, and Senate approves federal government's 22.7 trillion naira CBN loan request. Buhari launches Nigeria Agenda 2050. And at the bottom of the Daily Sun, court adjourns Kanu's application for medical leave.
Okay, well, let's also take a look at the stories on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. Tinubu to Wike, lobby me for projects refund. No part of Nigeria will be marginalized. Lord's governor on infrastructure says I wouldn't have won February 25th polls without his support. Shehu Sani tackles Wike for declaring holiday on president-elect's visit. 10th National Assembly, that's the kicker. PDP, LP, and others battle APC for Speaker, Deputy, and ruling party opts for consensus. Opposition parties raise 11-man team to scout for credible candidates. It's my turn to be Speaker, Doguwa declares. 2023 Hajj, 3,651 intending pilgrims complete payment in FCT. Organ harvesting, 48 hours to sentencing, Senate pleads for Ekweremadu. NITCOM boss, Abike Dabiri Erewa 2. Imo Varsity suspends lecturer for slapping female student. Ways and means, Senate makes U-turn, passes Buhari's 22.9 trillion naira request. That's on page 5. Obtain law degree or lose your job, Nasarawa Assembly tells judges. Nigeria to become top middle-income economy by 2050. That's according to President Buhari. Contractors want Tinubu to pay extra attention to rural electricity. Kirian.
Okay, now let's conclude with the leadership newspaper. Of course, above the name flag, we have stories that we have read in others, especially the Ekweremadu issue. Now, Oshimbajo lost journalists who authored a book on him. That's on page 6. Now, below the name flag of the paper, Tinubu to Wike, if you want to refund on Rivers roads, lobby me. We've also read that. Now, the lead story on the leadership newspaper is as follows. I said, National Assembly leadership, APC may opt for consensus. Senate President and, of course, Speaker. It's on page 4. With their rider, opposition members elect form coalition to produce Speaker. NYC moves to end leadership crisis. Asks Lukman to withdraw suit against Adamu and Omisore. All right. Don't truncate Kanu's suit against DSS. Court warns parties. It's on page 13. Of course, we read about the approval by the Senate of Buhari's 22.3 trillion loans. All right, it's on page 7 on leadership newspaper. LP crisis. We pardon Obi Dati for attending Abura's meeting. That's a HAPA. Okay, that's on page 7. Chukudi.
Thank you, Kirian. Imo Varsity, suspending a lecturer for slapping a female student. You would say such a scenario depicts, men who were raised in the era when physical combat was a gentleman's recreation. But why take it out on a woman? The fairer sex has to be treated properly. Treat her like a lady. You remember that term? Treat her like a lady. And they're going to get the best from a woman if you treat her properly. That's if he slapped her. Remember, we're journalists. We've not found out properly whether it's happened.
The lecturer has been suspended.
Yes.
Because the student allegedly came late to class. That's what the story is saying, that it was at the management meeting of the institution. The disciplinary committee was set up, and he was found to have done what he did. I mean, sorry, to inquire into what he did, but the first thing is suspension. If she came late to class, there would have been other students in class who would be witnesses.
Oh, sure.
Witnesses.
So probably a case has been established.
Yeah, so whether it's a man or a woman, because I see the argument you're making is treat her like a lady. No, if it's a boy, it's a man, I'm not saying you can have boys in the university. You have no right to assault
anybody at all.
Not anybody.
Yes.
You remember, it must have been sometime last year or the year before, there was also a lecturer somewhere in Nasarawa who, along with his children, assaulted another female student because it's over boyfriend issues and so on and so forth. The matter went to court, and the lecturer was convicted.
I like the prompt action that was taken.
Yes, convicted. So
quickly, I won't marginalize any part of Nigeria. That's coming from the president-elect, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, hails Wike for championing justice, but declines commitment on refund of money spent building federal roads, bridges in rivers. So the president-elect, and I think at this point we should start mentioning him more and more towards May 29. Yes, I was saying that the president-elect says he won't marginalize any part of the country. The first impulse is, you ask, of course, we didn't vote you in to marginalize anybody. But if we remember history properly, some Nigerian leaders get accused of marginalizing some parts of what should be their overall constituency. After politics, the saying goes, come governance and development. Once you get in the saddle, that's the mantra for you. In the case of the president-elect, for instance, he becomes the father of all. That's what it should be. So it's good language coming from the president-elect, if you ask me. Nigeria particularly needs his frame of mind at this point in time, given the rancorous aftermath to the 2023 elections. Now, about no commitment to refunding money spent by Rivers State on federal roads, bridges. Of course, that's the way to go. The first thing you do in this kind of matter is to engage some level of verification of claims and all that. So it would have been premature for him to begin to make promises when he has not even seen what the bureaucracy has on commitments, commitments to people within the polity. Now, the last bit there, Tinubu's home turns into Mecca for lobbyists. That's something we're very good at. It's just journalists like you that stay and say we are writing our news, we're not interested in, going to anybody. Maybe that's why many of you are poor. Anyhow, PDP, Labour Party, others battle APC for Speaker, Deputy, ruling party opts for consensus. That's rather strange. You mean the minority parties are hoping they could get the post of Speaker or Deputy? Because when I saw it the first time, it raised my eyebrows, so to speak. Where in the world, no, not where in the world, can that really happen in Nigeria, where the party that is not in the majority hopes to provide a speaker? Can it happen in contemporary Nigeria? But don't try to reason too much with politicians. If you remember Tony Wilson way back in time, talking about the politician, he's a man of many worlds. So the mind of the politician is a labyrinth. It's so productive in terms of how politicians want to think. But I think it's a tall order for people who are going to be part or become the opposition to ask for Speaker, Deputy. The APC is saying that they are settling for consensus candidates. The consensus candidate, I can assure you, 90% at this point is not going to come, from the. It's not likely to.
Well,
that's what I think.
For me, I don't know what the Constitution says. Maybe Kingsley knows better, but because I don't see a reason why a party that has a majority in the National Assembly should be begging to provide the head of the Assembly. I should have thought that maybe, if you're a majority, you are considered, you are going to produce the hierarchy of the administration of the National Assembly. That's what I would have thought.
I don't think.
You know why I'm saying this now?
It's not the Constitution.
That's what I'm saying. I said I don't know what the Constitution says, but to make things easy, we put ourselves in a tight situation, in a complex situation, and begin to struggle and politique. At the point where you don't need to apply politicking. Because the thing could even, remember what happened in 2015, right? It became a deal. It became a kind of fight between even among the members of the same party. So the Constitution should have, made it very, very clear that, look, if we produce majority, of course, give us the Speaker, or the Senate, give us the Senate President. Then that will be among the members of that majority party, and not that LP, who are just about 8 persons or 9 or so in the Senate, who want to be Senate President. It's not practicable. It is not possible.
My problem is that it hardly happens on the weight of wanting to do it because of your constituents. It's always a personal thing.
That's
the area where I tend to have issues with it. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong in ambition.
Let's just agree.
The key thing is with numbers.
Numbers.
The simple majority is required. To elect the
simple majority, the
leaders of the National Assembly. And I'm getting to a point. If what we refer to as the minority parties are able to aggregate the requisite numbers, and they then trump what you now say is the, or let's say the majority party, then of course they get it. And if you have some dissidents amongst those with the majority numbers, and they cross over to vote for somebody else,
nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible.
I agree with you.
And on this issue of federal roads, we'll talk about this.
Sorry, before we leave that, our system is presidential, but there are some countries, Israel, for example, where you have a hung parliament. No one is in clear majority. You have smaller parties that have votes, and it will require a great deal of lobbying for you to form a government. So the fact that maybe you have 40 and then the others have 15, 12, 13, 4, 5, doesn't mean that the fact that you have 40, if you don't have the requisite numbers to form a government, you cannot form a government.
And
sometimes, when you don't have the coalition, they bind together, but oftentimes the coalition on parks collapses.
In Israel, in the last 1 year, they have produced about 2 or 3 prime ministers, because of this, what Kinsler just explained. Netanyahu is so clever that he's about the only person now in the past 2 decades, that was able to contain, whatever, in terms of, building a coalition to run government. 2 of them have tried it, they failed within 3 months, and so on. So that's what system is all about.
And then let's also remind ourselves that during the Second Republic, we haven't seen that kind of alliance now in the Fourth Republic. NPN was the ruling party. But if you remember, NPN and NPP,
they had an alliance.
They had an alliance. And Edwin Umezoke of the NPP was Speaker of the House of Reps.
Yes, based on their understanding.
Contemporary. And you remember just a couple of weeks ago, probably we were discussing the late Senate President, Joseph Wise, about the scandal of the fact that he had not been buried since he passed away in November. Where I have not read any news reports showing that any
even
action
on social media has been taken since then.
any action has been taken, and I would think that this assuming the steps have not been taken, this embarrassment should be brought to a stop. You have at least 6 living former serving presidents of the Nigerian Senate. Take a look at the numbers. They are available. So what is it that they have tried to do? If you look at them in the instant republic, David Mark, of course, was long serving. Lawan, who is in situ, is right there. Wabara is still there. So you have them. Saraki was Senate president. So what is it that they have done on their own to say, look, let's put this shame behind us?
The point we've made is very, very apt and clear. I mean, so as actions should be taken. Before we go, this issue of federal roads, I keep wondering, because I think since this Fourth Republic, I've started hearing about federal roads being done by state government, and later you apply for refund. But for me, like in the state where I come from, you will see major roads in the heart of the city abandoned because it's a federal road. So I keep saying, for me, as a governor, honestly, I will do those roads because my people are the people using that road. And what President-elect, dropped for a week, is a pointer to the fact that, look, okay, come and lobby me. So by the time you go for the lobbying, then he will now make some issues clear to you. Like you said, someone has to do an assessment, proper assessment, to know what road, what quantity and the quality of food that is done.
No time to argue that.
For me, there's usually a procedure for reimbursement.
Exactly.
Where a state government takes on the maintenance or rehabilitation of a federal road. It's always been a contentious issue. Let's not forget. And by the way, you're talking about politics. When Tinubu was governor of Lagos, AD then, and then you had, of course, PDP at the center, and they were having their squabbles with Obasanjo and so on and so forth. The Lagos state government planted notice boards on the federal roads in Lagos.
Screaming headlines.
Western Avenue, for instance, before the stadium, between Barracks bus stop and stadium, said, please bear with us, this is a federal road. The road was rotten.
To make it clear that this is not my responsibility.
Please bear with us.
Okay, well, we conclude this is my review this morning. We thank you for staying with us. This very short period of this is my review. We would like to appreciate Chukwudi Okolie-Obaja once more for being here this morning. We're going to again return tomorrow for another session of a super review. You are watching Good Morning Nigeria. That's the place to be on a morning like this. Stay with us. All right, as a prompt to our conversation this morning on the 10th National Assembly leadership and, of course, matters arising, let's take this report by Abdul Salam Jibril.
The 2023 general elections has come and gone, but its ripples is still being felt across the length and breadth of the country. One of the 3 tiers of government, the National Assembly, is among several institutions that the election had an impact on. Recall that elections for the incoming 10th National Assembly was held on Saturday, 25th February, along with subsequent supplementary elections. The electoral umpire, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has since announced the winners of the 423 National Assembly seats. For the Red Chamber, that is, the Senate, has a total of 109 seats. The All Progressives Congress, APC, won a total of 59 seats, while the People's Democratic Party, PDP, with 36. The Labour Party, LP, has the seats of 8 senatorial districts. The Social Democratic Party, SDP, and the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, have 2 seats each, while the Young Progressives Party, YPP, and the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA, have 1 seat each. For the Green Chamber, that is the House of Representatives, the APC has a total of 175 seats, the PDP 118 seats, the LP and NNPP have 35 and 19 seats respectively, APGA with 5 seats, ADC and SDP 2 seats each, while the YPP has 1. The battle for the leadership positions in both chambers is already heating up, with zoning, forming alliances, and equity, among others, playing key roles in the build-up. In the red chambers, the 6 opposition parties have altogether 50 senators-elect, as against APC's 59. It is expected that they will play a major role in the battle for the leadership positions in the upper chamber during its inauguration on 13 June 2023. In the green chamber, there are reports that the opposition caucus has resolved to clinch the coveted speaker position since they have more seats combined than the ruling APC. Different groups and caucuses have begun to strategize and re-strategize, while some others are meeting with leadership of other political parties with a view to fine-tune workable formulas that can help them clinch the leadership positions of both chambers. How will this play out, and what effect will it have on the 10th National Assembly? Guests will be speaking to these and more shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Abdul Salam, for that background. With us in the studios, we would like to welcome a regular guest on our program. He's the Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate, distinguished Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi. Senator Abdullahi, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios is Anderson Osiebe. Anderson Osiebe is the Executive Director of Halo-Based Foundation and also the National Coordinator of Parliamentary Advocacy Network. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
I'm glad we have a serving senator, who is also the Deputy Chief Whip, which means you have a great understanding of the operations of the National Assembly from experience we've gathered over the years. And this time around, the 10th National Assembly is about to be inaugurated. And of course, the horse trading and jostling for positions, of authority in that institution. And give us a clue, of what the horse trading is all about now, and the possibility of getting the leadership of the National Assembly without having the 2015 experience and what have you. Of course, we've heard that the opposition parties are insisting on an election, all right, believing that they may have the requisite majority to do that. So let's share your concern and how it is going so far.
Well, thank you very much for having me. First, let me say that the National Assembly, of course, have maintained, represent the face of democracy. And it is an arm of government that at all times, attracts and elicits interest of Nigerians, because that is where the elected representatives are. And so the leadership of this very important arm of our democracy should be of interest to everybody. But let me say that it is also that arm where things have to be gotten right. And I say this with all sense of patriotism and sense of duty. And when I mean getting right, by the legislators themselves. Yes, a lot of horse trading, yes, a lot of issues with people who are external to them as members elect, for example, and subsequently when, such inaugurated as members. I say this because when they come on board, after all these up and down and, pull and push and whatnot, the reality they will be facing is the reason why I would advise that they have to tarry down. Because if you check the Constitution, what it says is for them to, make laws for good governance, for the peace and order of the country. And of course, they have the responsibility of representing the various constituencies that elected them. So there are expectations on them. And second or thirdly, they have the responsibility of having committees that will conduct oversight. The result of all of this should be such that the process of getting both their leadership and the subsequent representative of these various committees must be done with very high patriotic fervor. If they don't get it right, they are the ones in the meat. They are the ones who are going to pay the price. And I say this because at all times, whoever is the leaders, that is the presiding officer, because there are two layers. There are presiding officers and then there are the principal officers. The body of principal officers is all together, where you take the majority leader, the minority leader, the whips and the like, 10 in number in both chambers. Okay, that is the Senate President and his deputy, the Speaker and his deputy, and then this other body of principal officers. Now, all of this is usually done to create a balance and a harmony. And that is why, as it is, every geopolitical zone must have one person representing them in the leadership. That is not in doubt, no matter what happens. But the bottom line here is that, of course, we are getting towards the 10th assembly. And in this case, while I admit that, yes, there are a lot of other parties that have won tickets or seats, unlike what we used to have before. Most of these parties should not push their luck too far, because they are claiming and taking, powers or positions that they don't have. And the principle of the parliament is very clear. Every parliament is guided by the laws, the rules, the norms, the traditions. And what that means is that there are certain things that are not necessarily written, but they become the norm and the practice. Yeah. And they are respected globally. Many of them may not know this. And that is why when you come in, if you have not been there before, there is this proverb that when mother cow is eating grass, the young one always look at his mouth. That's what happens when you come into the chamber. Because how to even address and give your address, you need somebody who is older, who is returning, to do it so that you learn from how he's doing it. So I think the point to be made here is that I will advise that they should try as much as possible to allow the right thing to happen and to be done. We have experience in the past. It's easy for you to, I don't want to use the word gang up, because to come together and to do certain things, if it is not right, it has its own effect. But they will not see it at the point they are doing it. Mm-hmm. It is after they get in that they will know that what they have done is having its effect. So to my mind, in the two chambers, my party, the All Progressive Congress, has the majority. Unexpectedly, based on the norms, practice, and conventions, and all other things considered, it is the APC that has the prerogative, the vested interest now, to form the principal, that is the presiding officer.
They have the prerogative.
Yeah.
Is it constitutional?
Yes,
in terms of
it is constitutional, because whatever it is that we do in the National Assembly, what the Constitution says is by resolution, we dictate what we want to do. That is, we come up, even the, what did they call it, the rule book and the other book, that is what it is.
No, look, why I'm saying this is just for clarity, to say, look, if it is constitutional that a party that wins majority of members should provide the leadership, why the argument? Why are they jostling? Why are they?
Well, maybe this is happening because in their thinking, this is a new development. This is the very first time since we came back in this democracy that we are having more than 3 political parties, or more than 4, so to say. Because even in the 1999, we had AD have some members, AMPP had some members, PDP had some members. I think those are the 3 prominent parties. It was 3. And subsequently, if you check, even the 3 weakened down to 2 with some occasional 1 or 2. But this time around, we are having a showing of at least up to 3 to 4 political parties with some. In the Senate, for example, SDP has made a showing of having 2. YPP has 1. And then Labour Party has PDP. So you can see the party has increased. But the question here is simple. The leadership of the National Assembly is key to whatever the government of the day is going to be able to achieve. And I know for a fact that the president-elect, I don't think if you look at, I stand to be corrected or stand to be challenged on that, but my submission is that based on his democratic credentials, I don't think there's any other person I've seen who can match the experience he has gathered. He's been in the Senate himself. He's a senator himself. So I think he knows what is on ground, and as the days come by, he's definitely going to get it right. Because everything that must happen should be that we are going to have a stable National Assembly. Given the challenges Nigeria is facing today, we need a stable 10th Assembly. Whether people will call them rubber stamp or whatever is immaterial. But what Nigeria needs is a National Assembly that will come and provide, in line with the constitutional provision, that laws that will enhance good governance, that will provide peace and good order.
All right, Senator Sabi Abdullahi, thank you very much for your opening salvo. We also would like to welcome another regular on Good Morning Nigeria, a former member of the House of Representatives and also one-time Nigerian ambassador to Ethiopia, Ambassador Koyo Toyo. We're glad to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning and thank you.
Okay, well, just but as well have you take this next question. It appears that the 10th National Assembly is providing for Nigerians some unprecedented campaign, as it were, for the election of the presiding and principal officers, ultimately, of both chambers. It looks like this is another election within an election. What is your reading of this? Is this warranted, or is just again of another way of saying that the stakes keep getting higher in our political space?
Well, thank you, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here this morning. I would like to add that certainly in every democracy, the whole concept of a democracy is about the contestations for power. And even the movement into that space called the National Assembly, it's a product of contestations. And it's become even more, the more competitive that environment is, the push for a different standard begins to emerge. And I think that what we probably see as being a bit of a challenge is actually what we would probably say this is the beginning of the consolidation of our democracy. I think I did hear the senator talk about the complexity of what we have now. It's not just an assembly where one person can carry the votes and run with it. Increasingly, it is an assembly where people have to sit together and have a conversation on what the complex dynamics within the room is. And I think that that's good for democracy. Whether that means in the end that some people have to concede in order that we have this meeting of minds. I believe that that's what we need for our country. We have always said our country is a country where we have diversity, and we have to manage the diversity. The whole constitutional arrangement, even the character of the National Assembly itself is an attempt at managing that diversity, where you have representations from every state and basically on an equal basis. So in the end, the principal officers must represent that complexity. Even in terms of the choices they make, nobody will sit down and say, oh, I'm the majority party, I'm the ruling party, I'm the one with the votes. You need to have a conversation with even the smallest person who has just one vote in that assembly is as important as the one that has the multiplicity of votes. So it also begins to clearly state the fact that the separation of powers will be increasingly something realizable. In the past, it used to be a situation where the executive will decide who becomes the next head of the the parliament. But I think this is going to be a very far departure from it. And like I said, this is the story and the journey we need to go through in order to begin to build a more viable and more competitive democracy. The National Assembly definitely represents that complexity.
Okay. All right. I'm really concerned about this complex dynamic that you mentioned. That was that what is playing out now could be a consolidation of democracy in Nigeria. But of course, you know the history of National Assembly from 1999. It's always been a squabble. It's always been an unsteady institution with respect to what happened during the Obasanjo administration. We produced about 4 or 5 Senate presidents within 8 years, and so on. That shows that, of course, we have cracks, in terms of how we manage the complexity that you are talking about. For 2015, everybody knows the story of what happened. So when are we going to get this in balance? And I want to bring in Andas Nosiepe here. Of course, you know the scenario, and you've listened to a serving senator and a one-time member of the National Assembly. What's your take, what is playing out now with respect to the complexity she talked about in electing presiding officers and, of course, principal officers of the National Assembly?
Okay, let me first of all start by responding to what the distinguished just said, that it is constitutional that the majority party, must produce the leadership of the National Assembly. It's not constitutional. I think it's an arrangement that the National Assembly, has, and it's been on, and it's been on, and we've come to, respect that. But it is not, we know that it is not constitutional, right? So what that means is that the opposition party, right, can vie to produce the next leadership of the National Assembly. Now, but first of all, let's put the record, let's put this record straight. Now, when it comes to the composition of the National Assembly leadership, a lot of factors playing. You have competence, you have experience, you have knowledge, okay? And we have the ranking rule, because everything that's done in the National Assembly has to do with seniority. Seniority simply means the ranking rule. The ranking rule simply means seniority. So there is seniority in everything that is done in the National Assembly. There's seniority even in their sitting arrangement. There's seniority even in office allocation. There's seniority even in the chairmanship allocation and all that, right? So now, what I'm basically trying to establish here is that what is not actually a factor in the composition of the National Assembly leadership is zoning. Okay, so zoning is far from it, because it's seen as a privilege. Because in the National Assembly, zoning is not a factor. Okay, so that's why we appreciate that people who are advocating for zoning at this point in time, should appreciate the fact that if eventually the zoning takes place, they should see it as they should see it as a mark of they should appreciate it. All right, not at the end of the day, want to look at it as if it's a right, because we don't want to set a bad precedence that at the end of the day, maybe in 2027, when we are preparing for another election in the National Assembly, they will come to tell us that, look, we already have a precedence, and the precedence is that there is zoning in the National Assembly. Okay, so what we're basically trying to say is that, first of all, what we should be considering, first of all, as it is now, is that we have smaller parties, just like the senator just said. We have the SDP, we have the YPP, and all that. There must be, you must consider them. You must carry them along, because whether we like it or not, the opposition, has a role to play in the composition of the next leadership.
Can you clear this? Yeah, you said that zone is not a factor. That means it's not considered.
No.
What about balancing? Because I heard from the...
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. Why we are talking about zoning at this point in time is because of the mood of the nation. It's because of what the APC played to us. The Muslim ticket. So when I felt, we came back and said, look, who are the us? Nigerians.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, when I say there is need at this point in time, okay, to even look at the issue of zoning, probably for religious balancing, okay, and regional balancing. But the truth is that when it comes to the politics of the National Assembly, zoning is not a factor.
Well, okay, but of course, but sorry, please, I'm not putting you on the spot or something, you know, but we know that, so a short while ago we mentioned about Joseph Wires, you know, who was MPN, Senate President at the time, and he came from the South. There was kind of balance. And then Umezi, okay, you know, who was the Speaker, is from the Southeast. Therefore, the President, there, from the North. So there seems to be some kind of balancing too. I mean, if you look at the trajectory, of election of officers at the National Assembly. But when you say it's not a factor, I'm wondering,
But I thought Mr. Anderson Osiebe, distinguished Senator Sabi Abdullahi, they point out that in the composition of the Principal Officers Council, which is made up of the leadership of each of the chambers, and then the other officers, including majority leader, minority whip, and so on and so forth, every zone gets to be represented. So if zoning, as you are saying, doesn't matter, then how does this play out?
Okay.
Could you possibly get all your bills?
Make it clearer.
Let me make it clearer.
Before he goes further, I think there is a very fundamental issue that he's trying to throw under the carpet. It is wrong for anyone to say zoning does not matter in the National Assembly. That is not correct. We are operating the Nigerian Constitution. Like I said, the order and rule book is a product of the Constitution. Everything we do is a product of the Constitution, because the Constitution simply says by resolution we should what? Regulate our own affairs. That is where we take our powers from. Anything you will do is within that context. And like I said, in the National Assembly, every parliament is guided by both these rules, practice, norms, conventions. This is how we put it. This is how it is. But what I'm saying is that if you check section 14 of the Constitution, it says every person exercising executive, legislative, and judicial authority must conform to the provision of that section. And that section is saying, in whatever we do, we must act in a manner to ensure that every component part of this country have a sense of belonging. That is where the federal character issues are taken from. So you can't sit here and be talking about that it matters. And that's why I said, by the time you check each zone, either in the presiding officer or in the principal officer, must be represented. And let me take example with the present, Senate in which I'm a principal officer. Ahmed Lawal, distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawal, is the Senate President. He's from the Northeast. Senator Ovio Obagigi is from the South. Okay, that is the presiding officers. Then for the principal officers, we have Senator Abdullah Gobir. He's from the Northwest. Then the deputy, Senator Borofis, is from the Southwest. That is for the, that is the deputy leader. Then for the chief whip, is from the Southeast. And I, as the deputy chief whip, am from the North Central. Every zone is captured. That is how it works.
I think the point he
so
tries to
for me, just to come down, just to come down. What I'm saying is, it's something that is granted, because it's not possible for you to now pick two and put in one zone. Then there is a zone that does not have representative, and then you expect stability in that chamber. If you check what the Constitution says, that's why we are guided by the provision of that Constitution, that you must carry everybody along to have that sense of belonging.
Let's start from
I think the point he tries to make, maybe he wasn't very elaborate about the presentation. I was in the 7th Assembly. I think the point he tries to make about zoning is that when the party that is in leadership tries to impose a certain zone on the National Assembly, we are not under any obligation as the National Assembly to follow that imposition. But there is, within the National Assembly, according to its practice and its rules, there is zoning, in the sense that we try to take on board the different complexities of what happens. In the 7th Assembly, as you know, it was the Jonathan era, and the PDP was in power. and the party had zoned the speakership to the southwest. And that's when Mulikat was being pushed forward as the possible speaker for the House of Representatives. And we went into our session, our first session, and Tambawal emerged as the speaker from a different zone, entirely from that which the party itself had put forward. So the point about zoning is that you do not impose your zoning arrangement from outside of the National Assembly. We saw it again with the case of Saraki, what happened in the 8th Assembly when Saraki emerged as the president of the National Assembly. Yes, there is some sort of level of everybody has to be. Of course, the viability itself will depend on whether people feel that they are there or not. But the point about whether or not the assemblies, increasingly we are learning. In the first assembly, we had all those issues of 4 or 5 people with banana peels and everything, because that was our first assembly post-military. Now it is everybody knows the ropes. If you get into the National Assembly, you know what it takes to keep your members in peace. So if you notice, in the last 6 or so, in the last 4 or 5 assemblies, let me say 4, at least from the 6th assembly till now, we haven't had any of these incidences where somebody becomes a principal officer of the assembly and is removed. Because first and foremost, the person who becomes the principal officer is often somebody with long-standing recognitive experience, and the person is able to bring the experience to bear on how to manage. And oftentimes, the new assembly consists of not less than 70% new members. So the new members also have a long learning journey to go before they get into the act of knowing how to undermine the 30 or 20-something percent who have understood the game. It's not that easy to push a principal officer out.
Thank you. Let me raise the issue again so that we can have a part of the conversation around that. Process and procedure for the emergence of the leadership of the National Assembly. And that's part of what we're talking about, imposition of the leadership from outside of the chambers. In the lead up to the 10th Assembly, we have observed certain things. There are all kinds of issues around the horse trading going on. But part of what I find a bit curious is the open canvassing of the support of the executive branch. They've turned this sometimes into a photo opportunity or a television opportunity to say, I went to see the head of the executive, to tell him I'm interested in running for this office. The head of the executive has no vote when it comes to the choice of the leadership. He may have a voice, but not a vote. And people are just wondering, why are we getting into all of this? Where is the caucus, or where are the caucuses of the political parties where matters of this nature ought to be resolved? And the caucus is supposed to be all-embracing. First, Senator Sabi Abdullahi.
Well, thank you very much. I think the Honorable here said is about contestation for power. And if you check our democracy today, when you look at who holds the power, it's the executive that holds the power. You come in as a legislature, you want to make impact in your constituency, whatever you want to do is done and delivered through the executive. So I think we need to also know that is the reality of our own democracy. It's not easy even, and of course, the zonal intervention, the so-called constituency project, people always say is not our right, it's these, all kinds of things. It's still something people are debating about. But of course, if you also check, that is where members of the National Assembly are able to bring projects to bear on the life of those who ask them to represent them. So the executive holds that power. And so if the contestation for power is what all of this thing is all about, then you can understand why you cannot wish away the executive. Because when you come in as a principal officer, or as the presiding officer, all the things you will be bringing in terms of either communication from the executive, that is, you are the interface. And by right, you expect that those who are in the executive side will want to have that person they'll be able to work with. That is part of the contestation. Now, on the part of the legislature, they will prefer somebody who will be able to manage them, like she also rightly pointed out. The moment they don't have confidence in your capacity to be able to manage them and to run their affairs, for them to also achieve their objective of coming to the National Assembly, they are definitely not going to root for you. And I think, like she has also pointed out, the experience of the past years has shown clearly that that is actually the rule rather than the exception. And for me, it's a very important point that we must understand. And I'm happy to say that our democracy is truly growing, is deepening, and no matter what you do, the moment you pass, okay, just yesterday, for example, the Senate passed a bill on what we're trying to see, that by the time there's an audit, report, how is it implemented? Most of the audit report, whether from the House or from the Senate, the moment we consider it and what, nothing happens to it. So Senator Matthew Orogede came up with this bill to see what we can do to have a law that will now force some of this implementation. So I think these are the dynamics. And that is why maybe some of them are overdoing it, but definitely everybody is trying to curry that support. But at the end of the day, the bottom line, what happened in that hollow chamber is a function of the 109 senators and the 360 members of the House of Representatives. So, and all of them doing this, they know that this one is just the photo ops, but they are also meeting their colleagues. These ones are the photo ops, but they know they are meeting their colleagues, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is that those colleagues are the ones that take the decision. Now, let me also tell you that those of them coming on board, whatever action you take on the basis of your relationship with either the governor or even the executive counts on you the next 4 years. There are many people who go against the run of play, either from their governors or whatever. They know the consequence. That also is the unfortunate situation that members of the National Assembly find themselves. Because whether you like it or not, yes, you may decide to show, no, it's me who will take the power. When you do so, then you also go and contend with your local politics if it is not in line with the needs of your local politics.
All right, sir. Look, well spoken, you started by saying that people have been contesting the issue of constituency project, right? And you were saying that, look, as a representative, your people would expect you to bring home democracy dividends one way or another. But also, people are thinking that you are not an executive, you're a lawmaker. And that whatever promises that you may have made, to a constituent, to say, look, let me come first, to attract this to you. Remember that you're a lawmaker. And meanwhile, we still have state governments and local governments in this country. But the dysfunctionality of council areas, will not allow us to know where the money is meant for them are going. That is still happening. Now, the ITPC reeled out what they describe as white elephant projects, courtesy of constituency projects, which, of course, ICPC is a good organization, and they did the investigation around the nation, and there are many that are humongous. And of course, when you look at the amount of money allotted to these projects, they're never commensurate to what is on the ground. These are practical realities. I'm coming, sir, please. These are practical realities. Because ICPC cannot come out to begin to talk to the nation with lies, feed the nation with lies they have investigated. You may not be part of it, but it is happening. And some of you have also become contractors. And when you attract a constituency project, you go and use your own personal company or the company of your cohorts to go and do it, and they will do a shoddy job. That's why ICPC found out, and that is why people are contesting the issue of that constituency project. So I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah,
please.
yeah, but
no.
You said this now. It's not.
I'm
good
not telling you.
No. Let people hear. No, sorry,
sir. I'm not saying.
You diverted. Sorry, sir.
I'm not saying, sir.
Sorry, just one point. I just want to make one point.
Okay. Let's give you one.
I just want to make
30
one point.
30 seconds.
You see, the issue is simple. Every member who is elected to the National Assembly has 3 core functions: lawmaking, representation, oversight. Representation is where these jobs are talked about.
Okay.
Remember,
right,
excuse me, remember,
Mr.
President got elected by virtue of the votes that came from these same constituencies.
I agree with you.
So who makes sure that they get their own due?
Okay, you have made a point.
So, and the issue of ICPC, they are doing a good job, but let me say one thing. Please, let's not make sweeping statements.
So, sir, excuse me, sir. You know, we are quoting a government agency that is responsible for oversighting you as well.
Are we not the government agency?
No. The government is so ICPC is also oversighting you as you are oversighting. They are oversighting you as so. That's what we're saying. That Nigerians are becoming sensitive,
of course,
on these issues.
And we commend what the ICPC is doing.
We all come from localities, and when you say you have a project, I will personally go there if I'm at home to go and see it and assess it. We are human beings. Right?
I will invite you after
if you
the
say
show.
you have a project and that project is not functioning, then it's a ruse. That's what we're talking. That's what
I will invite you to my
that's why
conference
Nigerians are talking. I'm speaking for Nigerians now, not the ordinary Nigerians. You know. Okay, now you had issues, things you want to clear. You didn't clear, you know. So let's return to you for that clearance, you know, because you are into parliamentary advocacy network, so you should have a good understanding of parliament.
Okay, first of all, let me. I want to react a little bit on what the distinguished just said. You know, I'm shocked and surprised that the distinguished is, you know, talking about the executive while he's supposed to be talking about the legislature. You know, in the legislature, we have 3 arms of government. We have the executive, we have the legislature, and we have the judiciary. So I'm shocked that the distinguished is more concerned about how the executive is going to feel than, you know, what happens in the legislature. You know,
go to your point. Yes. Don't make reference. Don't go to your point.
Don't misconstrue my point.
No. Go to your point.
No, sir. Hold on.
We are laying issues
as they
appear.
Okay, sir. Let me finish.
Don't make reference.
Then secondly is that I feel we are here to talk about the composition of National Assembly. I think the issue of the constituency project is a topic for another day. Now, please permit me to go back to the issue of zoning that I raised. You see, when you're talking about the composition of the National Assembly, leadership of the composition, you're talking about 4 major offices. You talk about the Senate President, the Speaker, the Deputy Senate President, and the Deputy Speaker. Those are the 4 major offices in the National Assembly. Other ones are presiding offices, which is one. Those ones,
principal offices.
Principal offices. Those ones are presiding. So what we are saying is that when it comes to the presiding officers, right? Zoning doesn't count. I want to clear that. Zoning doesn't count. But when it comes down to principal officers...
I'll give an example of zoning not working at the level of presiding officers.
Now let me take you back memory lane. You see, there was a time in this country, you know, when we had a Senate president. During the time of Yaradua, we had a Senate president. Now, people have been, whipping up religious sentiments, ethnicity, and whatever. We've had a time when the Senate president, during Yaradua, a Christian. Okay? We had a deputy Senate president, a Christian. Now, when we moved over to the House of Representatives, we had a speaker in the personal position, she was also a Christian. So at that point in time, the issue of zoning, the issue of maybe religious balancing didn't play out. Because what we looked at that point in time was the experience.
What about regional balancing then?
No, there was regional balancing. That's what I'm telling you, that, if it happens, if the regional balancing happens, the people, the key players and the beneficiaries of this regional balancing should appreciate it. They shouldn't see it as a right. It is not a right that we must zone the office of the presiding officers. That's what I'm trying to explain.
Okay, you want to differentiate between the presiding officers zoning
and the principal officers and even the committee level.
No, understood, yeah. One understood.
Okay, well, thank you. We know that in these considerations, I threw in the question, Honorable Koyo Toyo. I said, look, in terms of process and procedure, where is the party caucus? Or where are the party caucuses? The issue that Anderson raised, these are matters that the party caucus that incorporates all the big potatoes in the political party, where they would meet and say, to draw up the map of Nigeria, president-elect comes from here, vice president-elect comes from here, where will the presiding officers of the National Assembly come from? That's where zoning is and balancing. That's where they are critical. That's one. So I would like you to respond to that. The fact that we appear not to be hearing from the party caucuses and transactions that, no, because that could then be misconstrued as, if I say transactions, it may then be misconstrued as transactional politics. Let's say goings on in the caucuses that ordinarily should be internal to the party are matters that are playing out right before our eyes, and that's to say also in the open. And then you have persons who are also, which is the second leg of it, now ramping up their campaigns by currying the favor of the executive, outgoing and incoming, you know, and then posturing and posing and saying, look, I'm potentially a good boy, I'm potentially a good boy, and also potentially, some would say, a rubber stamp. What are your thoughts on this?
I think you remind me of a saying in many of our local palaces that you are the son of an old man. So you talk like the politics of the former years, because the politics of the now. Where are the caucuses? Where? In any of the political parties? Yeah, in any? The governors have taken over everything.
They've gone. No
the governors have become the party. Let's face the reality of the game. I mean, we've even seen in some parties governors who sit as governors in one party and they take the party in one direction, they go in another direction, and they call it integrity. They move around in every circle, completely dismissive of the role of the structures that define the party. Gone are the days when the party speaks as a party.
That's it.
And even the president himself knows that the party has spoken. These are not parties anymore. These are not parties anymore. So, in the face of the absence of what used to be, I mean, we romanticize about what it used to be, and we wish we could go back to those things. Then you see people who want power, looking for the structures that have found themselves replacing those internal organs, and they go and appropriate those structures. Somebody from a different party goes to another party and says, you are the big man in this party. We all, even the way he says it, we all respect you. We see you as the king and the lord and everything and the majesty. Please, even though he's going away in another couple of days, you are the one to anoint your people to come, all your followers. And these are people we, the citizens, voted for. First of all, there is an element of accountability, and he made a very important point, which he made with his mouth half open. He made it, because I'm a victim of it. If your party and your leadership, largely the governor, says, vote for this man, and you thinking that you have arrived in the National Assembly as a member of the National Assembly, having worked, spent your energy, resources, and time, and got the favor of your people to go and represent, leave this man and go and vote for him. Your second term is over. Yeah, I went only for once. When I arrived at the national, my story must be told on national television. When I arrived at the National Assembly, the party told us to vote for Bulika, that it was the turn of the Southwest. And I have been a gender activist, as all of you know, all my life. I have no pretensions about it. And I was not going to change because of party or no party. Fortunately for me, both the party and my gender convictions came together.
Aligned.
And I aligned and I voted. As soon as I finished voting, it was muted in Cross River State that that's the end for me. So this is a reality. So we must also be, in the caucuses are something else. The big people, the people who have taken over the parties, And this is the problem of the political parties today. The governors have taken over the political parties.
Well, let's start today, really, because we know that, of course, during the Yaradua era, that some governors claim to have sponsored him to power, and even the current administration, some people claim they have sponsored Buhari to power, and all that. So it's been the trajectory has been there. I mean, it's not new to us. But I want to ask you something concerning...
But the entrenchment.
It's a culture now. That's the party.
That's the issue, yeah. So
it's
now,
more entrenched.
where do women come in here now? Ambassador Toyo, because it does appear that the women's fortune in National Assembly is dwindling, every election. Yes, and for now, I'm not sure there's any strong voice in the National Assembly. I've been a lady from either of the parties, because I know you have some representative there at the moment. Right. But what has happened? Because in terms of sharing the presiding officers, principal officers, and what have you, are they factoring in gender considerations?
Well, that takes me back to the point on Section 14 of the Constitution. As part of the fact that Chapter 2 of the Constitution is non-justiciable, these are principles. Yeah. These are things that you should be governed by. But we fail in our understanding of Section 14, that diversity that we are trying to embody is also a diversity that includes the genders. And so we often think about it largely in terms of geography, largely in terms of religion, but never in terms of the gender dynamics that exist. I'm hoping that if we have, given the fact that we are seeing an increasing dwindling, people, let me be a bit controversial here. People have said so many horrible things about one of our women who tried very hard to win this election using the Nigerian game. She ran this game clearly the way the Nigerian men run it. Now they have demonized her everywhere in Nigeria, that she did the wrong thing, she's a horrible woman, she's this, she's that. What am I saying? I'm not endorsing what she did or not do. I'm saying that you cannot win by doing things differently. Women cannot win by being different. Women try to be like the system that they have found themselves in. They are vilified. So at the same time, how else can they become integral to what is happening? Takes us back to what we have talked about on this platform several times over and over. If legislation, practice, and principles and rules do not begin to embody gender as a pre-requirement for any sort of engagement in the political space, there is not going to be any problem. As you very well know, this election, our numbers have fallen further.
Absolutely. Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo, Senator Sabi Abdullahi, and Anderson Osiebe, we thank you very much for your contribution so far. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. Welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. All our three guests are still here with us in the studios. Distinguished Senator Sabi Abdullahi and Honorable Nkoyo Toyo, as well as, of course, Anderson Osiebe. I want to come back to distinguished Senator Sabi Abdullahi. I asked this question sometime in the past, and I want to throw it in the course of this conversation. Ordinarily, because the presiding officers and ultimately the principal officers come from amongst the members of a chamber, the rule should be one of primus inter pares. That's to say, first among equals. Yeah. So we choose you to preside over our affairs. But it looks like the way our Fourth Republic, I don't want to say democracy, where our Fourth Republic is turning out, the character of it appears to suggest that we are actually now in the legislature, at least at the national level, electing monarchs. Monarchs with powers that are so extensive, and that even those, the kingmakers who are the members themselves, get to be intimidated by the persons whom they have chosen. Ordinarily, when you have a first among equals, it means any time you you're not satisfied with the performance of the individual, you can always call the person back. Honorable Nkoyo talked about appeasement and coordination and so on and so forth. Are we making these offices now too lucrative and too powerful as to warrant the kind of process and procedure we are seeing towards the emergence of the 10th National Assembly, leadership of the 10th National Assembly?
Well, let me say this very clearly. From the outside, it might seem what you are saying, but what plays out internally is not correct. It is still that first among equals. And the reason is simple. Honorable Nkoyo mentioned it earlier, that whoever is the presiding officer, the leader, you must know how to manage the diversity. The management of that diversity is what gives you peace or otherwise. If you are able to manage it properly, then you have peace. If you don't manage it properly, I want to tell you, you will not have peace. And that's why when we are sitting, you will notice that people who are not happy, they get up and say it to you. Because the presiding officer is not my boss. The Senate President is not my boss. He's my presiding officer. And that is why it's so difficult. I will give you an example. I'm the whip. My role is to make sure that there is calm in the discipline. You have to bring in some jokes, you know. You do it with elements of conciliation. It's not authoritative. Because he's your equal. The same right you have is the same right he has. The same privilege you have is the same privilege he has. The only difference is you said, okay, hold and do this. And that's why the provision to remove them is also provided. No another person can remove them except those who put them there. Now, within that context, yes, in holding forth, you become the face of that chamber. And of course, references are made to you and so on and so forth. So if within that context you talk about maybe him having some privileges that he can extend to you, yes, that exists. But he has to do it well. If he doesn't, he knows by the time certain thing comes in, that period you will see people saying no. Some people can, just because they are not happy with you, constitute themselves into nuisance in that chamber, and anything you come, they will kill it. Every presiding officer knows about this, and he must do things to make sure. And that's why many of them are both in the reps and here in the Senate. They try to make sure that they play that proper management role, respecting their colleagues, associating with them, standing with them when they have difficulties, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So I think that is what it is.
Okay. Thank you. You know, in the past, I'm sure we can all recall that we had the sanctions, you know, where the National Assembly presiding officers are suspended members for poor conduct. We have also seen a situation where a group of persons who, of course, appear to be in integrity group, you know, we are also exposed. We also know that some Senate presidents also battled, you know, in the Senate. And this also is a resultant effect of the process of choosing who is going to be the leader. But let me ask this question, because if anybody tells me that the presidency is not interested in who becomes presiding officers at National Assembly, I will not agree with you. Sure. There must be some level of interference, whether legitimate or illegitimate, but that happens. It's inevitable, even in the U.S. But although their system, of course, the vice president is the leader of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives is totally different from what we are operating, because like Kinsley said some time ago, that even before, when election is concluded in America, for instance, and the party is leading, we already know who's going to be the speaker. You don't need to contest, because even the party hierarchy in the caucus that he was talking about, they already know, look, it's going to be this person, so no need to contest. Even when you have to contest, it's very minimal, you know, and all that. Now, what is the level of what should be the level of interference by the presidency to ensure that he or she will have presiding officers at the National Assembly that will work collaboratively with him or partner with him, as the case may be? I want to bring you in, Anderson Osiebe. What should it be? Because we don't have to rule out the fact that he is not going to be interested in who runs the National Assembly.
Now, of course, Mr. President is going to be interested, but before I answer your question, let me answer the question he asked. He asked the distinguished. Okay. Now, one of the major reasons why, we've seen, Senate presidents who are very overbearing, and who, to an extent, don't have respect for his colleagues and others, is simply because that most of them are product of the executive. The executive, Mr. President and co, with his cabal, sits down to dictate and say, look, this is who I want for as Senate President, or this is who I want as Speaker of the House of Representatives. Now, the question he asked, we didn't see it when Chubu Akadibo was Senate President, because Chubu Akadibo was a product of the members. Yeah. Okay? We also see, what's the other man's name from Ebonyi said, I think it's coming to my head now. We didn't see that play. And even when David Mark was Senate President, we didn't also see that play. We didn't see that play when Saraki was Senate President. Because Saraki, all those people, we are a product of the members of the chambers, or members of the House of Representatives. You only see that play when the Senate President is being controlled by the executive. So what happens is that because he is coming from the executive, because he has the backing of the executive, he doesn't even care what happens to his colleagues. No. He comes out, becomes very overbearing, and he doesn't care. In fact, I even heard that even the present Senate President, distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawa, sometimes his colleagues have to fill a form.
Hey, no. You are on national television. No, I can't sit here. No. I take exception to that. That is not correct.
Anderson.
That is not correct.
Okay.
I will not sit here and I accept you saying that.
All right.
That is not correct.
Okay, distinguished senator.
Absolutely not correct.
Distinguished senator, thank you for the intervention. What you were repeating is hearsay, because you are not a senator. You're saying that you heard that senators have to fill a form to see him. So, so let's take that, and the senator has corrected that. The other point,
I will draw it.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So make your other points.
Do you understand me? So now, for us to have a very stable National Assembly, the executive must stay clear of who becomes Senate President and who becomes Speaker and who becomes the rest of them. Because that is, the National Assembly is the bastion of democracy, is a representative of the people. So we should allow the people to choose who represents them. That's why I came and I said, look, in the issue of presiding officers, we should even throw it open. Because experience should count. Knowledge should count. Competence should count. And even the ranking rule should count.
And integrity too.
And integrity too should count.
Yeah, well, thank you. Anderson, when you say throw it open, and then you say the ranking rule should count, experience should count, and then the other attributes you mentioned.
Okay, sir.
So if you say that, if you are throwing it open, and then say ranking should count, experience, once ranking counts, you are no longer throwing it open, you are circumscribing.
Okay, so let me tell you, ranking rule is the mother of experience, is the mother of knowledge, and even what do you call it?
Experience.
I will remember it. Okay, so
not necessarily competence.
No, and competence. Sorry, sir.
I'm saying
no. There's no way you would have spent so many years in National Assembly that you will not be competent to preside over.
Unless you're not interested.
Unless you're not interested.
So suppose you are disinterested.
There's no way you will not be interested.
Sorry, please. Let's get one thing clear. You see, you have thrown up so many issues.
Yes.
But let's put them in proper perspective. Let's not be emotive about it. For me, as far as I'm concerned, whoever is the presiding officer, his character as an individual, his qualities as a leader, his quality as a manager, and other things is what actually dictates what happened. And I will give you an example. When you were citing David Mark was a consensus, and he's in glove with the executive. But he held sway and had his own time. Saraki, that you were saying was a product of a rebellion. I bet you, You are not a senator. It's not every senator today who served in the 8th Assembly that you go and talk about him, that you get the same result. So please, let's not come here and be making sweeping statements. What I want you to know is that whoever is the presiding officer, he has said it. He's first among equals. You will be committing suicide.
We are trying to manage
if you don't respect your colleagues as a presiding officer.
We are trying to manage time now. I
make it both.
You know, you are talking from experience. You know that about that. So I'm going to believe you. All right. But we are human beings, and we are running what I call African type of politics. That's what we're playing in Nigeria, for instance. And you cannot remove that, because that's what we are. In terms of presiding officer, someone needing to see this Senate president and is asked to FIFA and what have you. From the point of Usiebe, it's a hearsay. That's number one. But again, there are groupings in all what we do. In the National Assembly, there are people who wouldn't like the Senate president, or whom Senate president does not like. It is natural. It's a natural phenomenon. Some people may be working against him, and he will know them. And sometimes he may not even give you opportunity to speak on the floor of the House. It happens. It's natural. So if I hear that somebody filled their form, I will not say 100% true or false, but it's a possibility, considering our nature as human beings and what we do when we gather. There are always groupings. This one, the clicking. We have cliques here and there. It's there in the National Assembly. So, that is why we need really a good leader to be Senate President.
Eva, let me tell you, in the contrary, for the person who is presiding now, those people who are showing what you have described are the ones you will ask to speak on the subject matter. It doesn't shut them out.
Okay, fine. Which is a good leadership. It's a good leadership, disposition, if that is the case. So I agree. I want to agree with that. But generally, we are human beings. We are political animals. So we know that.
But Kira,
I want to bring in. I wanted Madam Nkoyo to come in here as we are trying to wrap up this particular edition of the program, as to what are the expectations going forward. The jostling is on now, horse trading is on now. What are you expecting to see in the next couple of weeks before the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly?
I think we have laid a foundation here that the executive would definitely be interested in who emerges, that the person has to be someone whom they can work with. But I'm also hoping that they themselves understand that the person they can work with must also be a person who can manage that complexity. Because if the person you think is the best person for the job cannot manage the complexity, then failure has already started right there. The other thing I hope we will see is that as much as we think the zoning factor is important, we'll also be able to play up the question of the strength of the individuals who are vying for this position. But the other thing I hope I will see, and that would really gladden my heart, is that those who are in the non-ruling party can begin to show a stronger voice in how this process plays out. Why am I saying so? Because if you're going to begin to have a more vibrant National Assembly where we are not complaining about the quality of representation, quality of leadership, quality of everything, you need an element of that jojo. When the whole thing looks like it's going in one direction every time, going in one with the greatest respect to the Senator, we still don't understand how the National Assembly allowed us to borrow so much. We still don't. And we still feel that the National Assembly could have done a better job of our debt profile. So we are hoping that the opposition in the National Assembly to this in this National Assembly will be more proactive about asking questions, will be more proactive about disagreeing on things that are fundamental to the survival of our democracy. And hopefully we'll be able to see that both in terms of whoever leads as the presiding officer, he is always ahead of the rest of us in terms of making sure he's laying the right foundation for his the assembly to go forward.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Nkoyo. But against the backdrop of what the country went through in the 2023 general elections, as respecting the fault lines that got exacerbated, religion, ethnicity, and hate speech, fake news, and all that, and the fact that the country needs healing. Senator Sabi Abdullahi, what would you like to see in terms of the leadership of the 10th National Assembly?
Well, for me, what I would like to see is a stable country, a united country. And this stability and unity is a function of the final decision that will have been taken to ensure that every constituent part of this country can now calm down, believing that they've been brought on board. And to do that requires a lot of tactical thinking, requires a lot of engagement, which to my mind is what is right now ongoing, because the president-elect has made it clear that he has to consult, he has to engage, and if that engagement process leads to this terminal end, then for me, I will be happy, because he has told Nigerians about his renewed hope. And that renewed hope must be anchored on a National Assembly that, within the context of the present dynamics that they have, should be able to engage robustly in supporting whatever programs they have brought in. Doing that is what I would be expecting. So
right. Are you returning to the Senate and 10th Assembly?
I'm not returning.
They are going to miss you, really, because you're going to miss your experience. You would have been a ranking person. You would have been vying for one position or the other. So, on that note, we'd like to appreciate you once more, Senator Ali Sabi Abdullahi, always ready to defend the Senate of the Federal Republic. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll be bringing you here, even though you're not going to be in the 10th Assembly. Okay.
At every time,
Ambassador Nkoyotoyo, I want to also appreciate you. I like that name. I keep liking to call it. All right. Thank you indeed. Former Ambassador to Ethiopia and former member of House of Representatives. All right. And that's no already, I want to ask you what you want to see, because already you have seen it. We have known what you want to see. We just want to thank you for being here today. We will bring you again sometime. Yeah, exactly. All right. Now, let's go to sports now.
No, Kilian, I think let's take foreign. That's what we are.
What we have at the moment. Yes. All right. We usually begin with sports. Okay.
The conflict in Sudan has so far killed 550 people, including civilians, and wounded more than 4,900. The fighting has displaced at least 334,000 people inside Sudan and sent tens of thousands more to neighboring countries, Egypt, Chad, South Sudan, the Central African Republic, and Ethiopia, according to UN agencies. More than 42,000 Sudanese who fled the war in their country have crossed into Egypt, along with 2,300 foreign nationals since the crisis began, according to the UN Refugee Agency. Aid workers are increasingly concerned about lack of basic services in these areas and also in Port Sudan, some 400 kilometers from Khartoum. An estimated hundreds of Syrians who came to Sudan fleeing their own country's civil war over the past decade are among the last foreigners to leave. Visiting Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has hailed Syria's Bashar al-Assad for overcoming sanctions and achieving victory in the country's 12-year-long civil war, in which Tehran has been a major ally. The visit is a first by an Iranian president since Syria's civil war broke out. Tehran has provided economic, political, and military support to Syria, helping Damascus claw back most of the territory it lost at the start of the conflict and positioning itself in a leading role as Assad seeks to focus on reconstruction. Both countries remain under heavy Western sanctions.
All right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We'd like to appreciate you for being with us. Tomorrow is another day. Join us, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umaya. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.